Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Become a Rural Generalist with the RACGP webinar. Tonight, the webinar is proudly sponsored by the Rural Doctors Association of Australia. My name is Karen Jadlowski-Tan, and I'm the current Clinical Head of Rural Pathways at the RACGP, and I'm joined by Joe Sayer, who's our Rural Programs Manager from New South Wales, and three rural generalists who are here to talk to you, Doctors Inna Sytenko, Sarah Lim, and Monique Hayes. So I'm just going to kick off with a few things. First of all, with acknowledgement of country. We'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands and waterways in which we work and live. We recognise their continuing connection to land, water and culture, and pay our respects to elders past, present and future. I'd like to extend that acknowledgement to any First Nations colleagues here tonight. Particularly here in Western Sydney, I'd like to pay my respect to the Darug Nations. So, a few housekeeping. If you need to contact Laura, write down the number on the screen there. If you have technical difficulties, give her a call. If you have any specific questions about your situation, please email us on the becomeagp@racgp.org.au. You won't have access to microphone or camera, but this will be recorded and you can use the chat box or the Q&A function. If you see other people who have the same questions, you can give it a thumbs up and we'll bring it up the top and we'll address it towards the end of the webinar. So you can see Laura's putting in some messages in the chat box for you. If you need her number, it's in the chat box as well. So next slide, please, Joe. We'll kick off with talking about the RACGP Fellowships. So for tonight, our focus is on the Rural Generalist Fellowship, but just a quick recap on the two fellowships that are the endpoints of our training. Getting a fellowship of the RACGP means that you're a specialist GP and you'll be registered with the Medical Board of Australia as a specialist in general practice. In fact, the endpoint of both the ACRM and the RACGP training as a fellow gives you recognition as a specialist in general practice with the Medical Board. So there's no difference in that recognition. But what we also have is a Rural Generalist Fellowship, which means you have some additional training and you're recognised for the additional skills that you've gained as a rural generalist. And it's awarded in addition to the FRACGP. So you could train towards the FRACGP RG, but you need to actually complete your FRACGP before you can get the Rural Generalist Fellowship conferred. We're just going to quickly talk about the long history that RACGP has in GP training. We've actually been serving the community since the 1950s and 60s as an organisation, and we've started training GPs even then. And there's always been a rural shortage of workforce for GPs. So we've had 60 years or more of experience in training GPs and supporting our communities. In 2022, we celebrated our 30th year anniversary. So this is our 32nd year as a rural faculty. And we have over 24,000 rural members. In fact, our total membership across the RACGP is 40,000 and 24,000 of those are rural members. So a significant number of them actually work in rural. And to date, we've got 1,100 RACGP members who've already qualified as rural generalists with our fellowship, and another 440 doctors on their way to gaining their Rural Generalist Fellowship. So what's a rural generalist? This is a term that's now become quite popular, but it describes what has been already for a long time. We've had a lot of rural GPs who've operated as rural generalists. They are rural GPs who provide the full gamut of services in a rural environment in general practice. So they'll look after people from antenatal to birth to children, all through your lifespan, chronic disease, palliative care, mental health. They provide all those services to the full scope of practice. Plus, they also serve the community's needs in emergency. They'll provide emergency care, usually in the small rural hospitals after hours, and they'll provide some additional skills. So they may have chosen to gain extra skills in mental health or obstetrics or anesthetics, and you'll hear about some of those from our rural generalists here tonight. So it's someone who's a rural GP who does some extra emergency and some extra skills that's in addition to the usual rural general practice skills. Can I go to the next slide, please? So I'm going to pass over to Jo here to tell you a bit more about what's available for you to train as an RG across Australia.
Thanks, Karen. So the map that we've got on our screen at the moment obviously identifies and is a great representation of all the options that are available to our rural generalist trainees throughout Australia. There's over 400 additional rural skills training posts that we've got accredited. And if you have something that is other than listed what we've got on there on the screen, then you need to talk to our team, and we can see how we can make sure that it meets the criteria for rural journalism and our accreditation process. So as you can see there, not only will you develop additional emergency skills, you'll also gain specialist skills in those disciplines on the right-hand side there. So potentially you're asking, so when can I choose to become a rural journalist? And as the slide says, it's at any time that suits you. So what I encourage you to do is when you're thinking about starting your training, or even you're in your training time right now on the AGPT, or even as a fellow GP, do your homework, gather your information, and consider your training goals. And I'm going to introduce something to you tonight. It's called TTU, Talk to Us. Talk to us when you start your training so you know when is a good time to start your additional rural skills post. Talk to us during your training if you're needing to enrol with the rural journalism enrolment. And also then you're probably thinking, well, how am I going to become a rural journalist? Well, when you're starting your training, you can opt in by selecting the Fellowship for Rural Journalism during your application. And even if you're at the stage of not even considering it, I'd recommend that you would, because then we'll be able to keep you informed about rural journalism and our training, any updates that you need to be aware of. Remembering you, because you can opt out. So when you're starting or thinking about your application, opt in. During your training, you might also want to express an interest by talking to your medical educator or your training coordinator, or even my fellow colleagues, myself, as the Rural Program Managers team as well. And then also post-fellowship, you could also apply online via our website or perhaps talk to our rural faculty as well. So there are many options that you can opt in for the Rural Journalism Fellowship. What about if I change my mind? Well, as we know, life gets in the way sometimes and life happens. So not only can you opt in, but you could also opt out as well. But if you are considering opt out, TTU, talk to us. We want to know what's going on for you. We want to know that we can actually provide you with potential options or support that you might need. Okay, so make sure you have a chat to us. What we'll do now is, now that we know how we can actually opt in, let's have a look at the actual fellowship pathway and see how this suits your training. So as you can see, the AGPT program, or the Fellowship towards the Royal College of Australian General Practitioners, is 3 years in total. It consists of your first year of hospital training. And for some of our registrars, they may opt in as an intern, and that time will count as part of their training. Or they may submit a recognition of prior learning experience application. You've got your 18 months of general practice, and for our Rural Generalist Fellowship, you need to at least complete a minimum of 12 months in a rural community with the MM setting of 3 to 7. So that we can enhance our core emergency skills, we could dedicate our extended skill time to actually help us complete that. And the extended skills time can be done, as the diagram mentioned, after the hospital time. Now, on completion of that, if you choose to, you could pursue with having completed all the requirements and fellowship assessments, work towards your fellowship. But then if you're opting in as a rural journalist, you could then you do your 12 months as your additional rural skills training time in said discipline that you're actually interested in. And then again, moving on towards the Fellowship of the Royal Australian College General Practitioners, or G Fellowship. You'll have a note there that it says the ARST can be undertaken at any time after the hospital year. What I would recommend is, subject to the curriculum that you're actually considering, talk to us just to make sure that you actually meet the prerequisites. Okay, so now we know how to opt in. Now we know what the pathway looks like. Where can I actually do that training? Well, if we think back to that pathway, you've got your hospital year, and it's your choice of any accredited hospital in Australia and New Zealand. Your core emergency, which you can see there. But again, what I'd encourage you to do is do your homework. Think about where this training is going to support you. Is it a matter of it's the discipline and the location doesn't matter, or is it the location and the discipline does matter? So let's have a think about it prior to actually commencing, or TTU, talk to us. So Karen, we've got some information about the core emergency medicine training, and I wondered if you could outline some of that detail for the team.
Sure, thanks, Jo. So as we talked about before, every rural generalist need to provide emergency medicine to support their community. So for our trainees, you can do it as a 6-month block in a hospital. And if you're in a bigger hospital, you have lots of FACEMs around. But if you're in a smaller hospital, we need to make sure that you're in a place that's well staffed, that you'll be well supported. There's a supervisor who can come in whenever you need them, and they need to provide emergency services 24/7. So a small hospital environment in a rural location would be fine, and you can actually do that in a more extended way, not full-time and alongside your rural general practice. So there's a lot of flexibility in how you can cover this core emergency medicine training. But at the end of the day, you're going to come away with skill sets that's gained through that will enable you to lead and run a small rural hospital as either a solo GP or as part of a team of GPs. And we want to make sure that while you're doing that training, you're in a place where people there are committed to your education and training. Over to you, Jo. You're on mute, sorry.
No problem. So when we think about the additional rural skills training, there are, hopefully that this diagram represents the actual state-based jurisdictions that actually support our rural generalists doing their actual placement. So as your college, supporting your Rural Journalism Fellowship, we can help facilitate some of the discussion that might need to happen with the Rural Journalist Coordination Unit within the state, or also the training hospital or placement that is needed. So, for example, if you are on the Rural Generalist Program and you have a 12-month training placement with a hospital already, come to us and let us know so we can best guide you on how to support you on that. Or in your state, you may opt in through a Rural Generalist Coordination Unit as well to support you through that placement. So just again, you're at the centre of this, and we're all here to support you through that process. So what about choosing a... Oh, sorry. Sorry, Karen. No, I was going to say, Karen, did you want to talk about choosing a region?
Yes, of course. So when you go to apply, you'll be asked to choose 1, your pathway, and 2, the region you want to train in. So the pathways can be rural or general. Now, either rural or general pathways will allow you to train towards rural generalism. So you can choose RG on either pathway. So it doesn't really matter, and we've found that quite a lot of people in the general pathway choose to do RG. The only difference is if you're on the general pathway, you can actually spend time working in MMM1 locations during your general practice training, whereas if you're on the rural pathway, you can only work in MMM2 to 7. And it really doesn't matter if you're going to do RG training anyway. You will have to work in MMM3 to 7 for at least 12 of those 18 months. Now, if you already belong to a Rural Generalist program with the RG coordination units of your jurisdiction, we would guarantee that you will get the rural pathway of your choice if you get into the program. So that's to enable you to achieve your rural destination endpoint. Move on to the next slide, Jo. Sure. Yep. So how do you decide where you want to train? When you go into training, you'll be met with a team of people just like Joe, who would love to help you map out your training journey. Now, you start with your career plan. If you've got a career pathway, this is what you want to do. You want to be a rural journalist. You want to have certain skills, but you don't know where you can practice those skills. That's where you can get help to map out your location of choice. So there's no point, for example, going to a state where there's no need for anaesthetist, because if you want to be an anaesthetist, you've got to go find work where they need a GP anaesthetist. If you want to work in a particular location, because either you have family there or you want to move there because you just think it's a wonderful place, then you want to go and find out or talk to people about what are the healthcare needs of that community, so that you can gain the skills that would actually be most sought after by the community to serve their needs. So that helps inform what discipline you choose. So thinking back to the list Joe showed you, you may find that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander health is most suitable for where you want to go, or mental health, or pediatrics, or combination. We actually have the flexibility to allow you to tailor your own additional rural skills training, which is really nice, and a lot of our RGs have done that. In terms of what is support, as I mentioned, you'll be welcomed by people just like Joe. So they're going to meet with you once you accept an offer and have what's called an induction meeting. So they run through the program with you and help you map out your pathway, what your training journey could look like, and what's the best training journey to fit with what you want to achieve and where you want to go. And if it means that you may need to go outside of your region to do something else, to do additional rural skills training or emergency training, that's fine. And some of our registrars have actually chosen to go to places like Northern Territory to do some of their general practice training in our composite posts. So we do have flexibility to allow you to move across the nation, particularly if you want to go rural. We wouldn't be stopping you. Next. So a major part of our program is, of course, giving you training and giving you education. And part of that is to give you feedback as well, so that along your training journey, you will be given a lot of support, feedback to help you improve. And it also depends on what discipline you're doing, because sometimes you may rotate out of general practice training. You go to the hospitals to do additional rural skills training. But we will actually liaise with the hospitals and the other specialist colleges, so that we're all on the same page about how you're going, to make sure you're well supported and that you're progressing through your training in a timely fashion. And if there's any barriers or roadblocks, we want to know about it and provide you extra support as needed. And next. So I might pass this one back to you, Joe. You know more about this.
Sure. So in addition to your education support, your training plan support, there's also financial supports that are available for our registrars that seek to go rural. So you can see here on the left-hand side the actual incentive that's been identified, and then the payments or spectrum of payments that can be made. Top right-hand corner, there's a QR code, and I encourage you to take a look at that as it'll explain a few of these. But just to grab a couple of them, we've got the GP registrar support payments, and they are every semester, and they are based on location, so MM2 to 7. So if you decide to train in a GP training practice location and MM2 to 7, that's the spectrum of payments that can be made. Also, in addition to our areas that have been identified as workforce shortage, we've got some flexible funds there as well, ranging for each semester, again, from $5,000 to $45,000, depending on the location and need of that practice or practice location. Yeah.
Cheryl, you might have to click on that slide again to make the QR code appear.
Oh, there it is. I apologise. I had it on my screen. There's the QR code. Yeah, fantastic. So QR code will tell you some more information about all those flexible supports that are available to you.
So we've already mentioned a lot of this. We've talked about the flexibility, the balance in your life, and I haven't talked about small group learning focus, but a lot of our education is provided through small group, peer group medical educator facilitated learning, so you can learn from your peers as well as your supervisors, but the evidence is that's the best way to learn and to grow and form your professional identity. And we've mentioned a lot of the opportunities of all the places you can go across Australia, and if there's others where you want to go is not accredited, we can certainly look at accrediting it if it's appropriate for your training. Is there anything else you want to add, Jo?
Yeah, some of the things that I hear from registrars that are currently in training, or those that are seeking a career in general practice, is they hear about the local program teams. So they hear about the support and that wraparound support that's available to them, where their local training coordinators, their medical educators, and their rural programs team as well. And they appreciate the practical advice that they are given around their training as well. And also it allows them, with that connection, with our connection, it means we can actually connect them to the right people as well at the right time within their training. So I think local rural programs team have been really valuable. So what we've done is, I was going to mention also too, is that, if you've been able to join some of the other webinars that we've had throughout the last few weeks, we've told you how. We've told you how to apply and what the selection process is about. Today, we've told you about the what. We've told you about the rural generalism pathway. And if you've missed those, there are some recordings, and this subject will be repeated in a couple of weeks. The next one's going to be about the where, the training regions that are available on the 20th of March. So we've told you about how, we've told you about what, now we need to know where. So make sure you join us. So what are the next steps, Karen?
Yeah, so next we're going to hear from our panel of rural generalists. We might start with Dr. Inna Sytenko, who's a rural generalist from Western Australia. She's from a small town called Mora, east of Perth. And I'm going to pass it to you to tell us about your story.
All right. Good evening, everybody. My name is Inna. I actually wanted to correct myself with information about where Mora is situated. So it's actually not east, it's west. My apologies. So I will tell you a little bit about my situation. As an international medical graduate, obviously I was falling under 10 years moratorium. So pretty much at the start, I knew that I have to go rural. And initially, I must be honest with you, initially that kind of thought that I have to go rural quite upset me, because at the time when I knew that I want to proceed with GP training, I was thinking, goodness, what should I do? I have son who actually having disability, and I'm like, how can I leave him at home? There's no really friends who can help with him. So that was my biggest concern. And at that time, I decided, okay, I might just go through rural generalist pathway. I will have extra term, a few terms to study additional skills, just to have an opportunity to stay longer in Perth, just to be with my son. So honestly, that was kind of my back thoughts about become a rural generalist. I decided to choose obstetrics because, first of all, even back, many years ago when I was in Ukraine, I always wanted to do obstetrics. I had passion for that, but I didn't have opportunity to choose that profession for different reasons. So I decided to do women health because I do like in small communities where lots of, for example, Aboriginal women or even just women, it's always kind of demand to see the woman doctor. So that was my rationale behind choosing women's health. So I did my obstetric skills in Midland Hospital. Look, to be honest, it was very hard for me. I don't know what other people experience, but I never really regret it, because today when I'm in Mora and I'm in a small community, pretty much all women, they come in really, they all my patients. When women come with women's health, they always asking, can we see Dr. Inna? And it's very nice because I have that continuity of care. All pregnant women, all women who needs women's health, contraception, etc. They all come into me. It's very nice to have that personal kind of ties with them. I guess it's different to GP in city. I don't know. I never been GP in city. I don't know, but in a small community is you build your very precious relationship with the patients because you started to know community. You actually become aware who is the family, who is the son, daughter, grandchildren, etc. It's become really very, very tight. So that is, I would say, is really a good thing about small community. So that is pretty much my path through hospital to Mora. So currently I'm in my extension term because I did extension request for extension term because I didn't make through my KFP exam, unfortunately. But once again, I was very well supported by RACGP. I'm an extension at this stage, which give me opportunity to pretty much. I mean, I prepared for KFP. I done it in February. I'm awaiting for results. Hopefully, next step it will be CCE, and it's it. What should I say to you? In regards to why I choose my location in Mora, first of all, once again, it was convenient for me because Mora is MMM5 location, which is great. It's kind of rural, but at the same time, it's not far from Perth. It's 175 kilometers. It's pretty much 2 hours you're in Perth if you want it. My biggest positive thing about Mora is my team. We have Dr. Chapman, who is my supervisor, Dr. Christelle, who is in her training as well through Experience Pathway. And recently, we also welcome another new doctor, Dr. Naima. It's always been very, very good, strong, very trusting connection between all of us. It's really important when you're in a small community and when you're in a small team. You become a friends, you become trusted team, hopefully. In our case, it is. And things actually getting sorted for you is much easier in contrast to when you actually work in a hospital and team is really big and you have to go through, for example, if you have problem, sometimes you have to talk to your administration or you have to talk to your department of, head of your department. When here you just, three of you, four of you can sort this out easily. So like I said, good team, good support. You always feel supported by college as well. To start with, we have lots of workshops which still can bring you to city. In the GPT-1, we used to come to city pretty often. GPT-2, we had lots of Zoom sessions. We still was having meetings in Perth. And GPT-3 is actually different with my training, but I believe it's different to new GPs now. What can I tell you about your opportunity as a rural GP? Once again, because I am trained in Whitbelt area, I belong to rural West community. So once again, you can go through rural West training. They offering lots of workshops as well. And every approximately 3 months, you can also apply for additional funding or bursary to actually be sponsored for your courses which you want to attend. What I did it's my personal experience. I've been through ILS, as actually ILS 1 and 2, most of you know that if you go through, for example, when you go in the city, it costs you probably between $2,500–3,000. I've been going through my rural pathway through ILS 1 and 2 as a GP registrar. I pay only $330, and I had no problem to attend it. It was no waiting list. I needed, I was provided, I attended, and seriously, it was best ILS 1 and 2 I ever had in my training. Seriously, it was so good. I also went for kind of emergency training course called Prompt, and I'm actually booked for another emergency course, REST. So pretty much you go, you get your skills, then you put your application to your Rural West website. When bursary is open, you get your money back. So like I said, we're not struggling here with the, shortage of courses or shortage of money. You want to go, you go. You come to a supervisor, said, listen, I want to do this, or I want to do this. No problem. This is your days off, you go, you do it. So this is in regards to kind of your training opportunities.
Wonderful, Inna. You've given a really nice picture of rural general practice and great tips, and you're selling WA very well. There's no shortage of work in WA for rural journalists. We might come back to you later for questions. Is that okay, Inna?
Absolutely.
Might move on to Sarah, who's an extraordinary rural journalist, because not only has she done one additional rural skills in emergency, but she's gone and done anaesthetics as well, and her latest locations in South Australia, although she's actually in New Zealand right now. Sarah, over to you.
Thanks, Karen. I might actually get control of the slides, please, Joe. So I'm just going to request remote control. Great. So while we're doing that, so my name is Sarah. I'm one of the rural generalists, and like what Karen said, I've got advanced skills in emergency medicine and anaesthetics. Before I proceed, I'd like to acknowledge the custodians of this land. So I'm in Whangarei in New Zealand just for a holiday, and I acknowledge the people of this land and the elders past and present. So this photo is me in Kununurra. So I'll work through my slides, but you'll find out that I love traveling and I travel a lot, and that's part of being a rural generalist. This is in Kununurra in the Kimberleys, and it's the boab tree, which is one of their signature tree. So I'm just waiting for the slides to move. So as a rural journalist, I wear a lot of hats. So of course, I'm a rural journalist with RACGP, which Karen and Joe talked about. I have an advanced skills in emergency medicine. I also have an advanced skills in anaesthetics. I've done a certificate of women's health, so I can do Mirina's, Implanons, shared antenatal care, sexual and reproductive health. I also love teaching, so I'm an advanced life support instructor with ARC. I also teach the registrars with RACGP, so I'm with the FSP program. And lastly, I'm an associate lecturer with Monash University. So what does a typical week look like? You might think, I've got too many hats. So a typical week looks like this. For example, on Monday, I'll be working a 12-hour shift in emergency. And then Tuesday, I get to do some anaesthetics in theatre. On Wednesday, you will see me in a GP clinic in Port Lincoln, looking after chronic disease patients, measuring blood pressures. And because I've got my certificate of women's health, I also have patients asking or requesting for Mirina's or Implanons. And then I might be on call on the weekend for anaesthetics. But on top of that, some days I also teach university students or registrars. So that's why I love being a rural generalist. There's a big variety. There's a variety of things that I can do in a week. So why did I choose to do rural journalism, or why did I become a rural journalist? This map is what I did in 2022. So in 10 months, that's where I've traveled all around Australia. So not only I got to travel, see the country, but I also got to work with amazing people. And I also learned how different places do different things, which I think is quite unique, and not many doctors can do that. And you're well appreciated in the region. So I think as a rural generalist, you're a unique specialist and you can wear different hats. You can work different locations and do different things, which, you know, as a specialist, I don't think a lot of them can do that. I think as a rural generalist, I have a good work-life balance. So I love to run, and I still run almost every day. I also love swimming. I love flying. I love traveling. And this is a photo of me in Exmouth. You might have heard of the Ningaloo, and I've done swimming the whale sharks there and some snorkeling. And that was just part of locoming and traveling at the same time. I used to have some pets, so I had dogs, chickens, ducks, and had a vegetable farm. So that's what I do outside work. So as you can see, I love my life. I also love work. So I get to have a good balance of both life, work, family, and, you know, just having fun in life in general. So the other reason why I love to be a rural generalist is the variety, as I've talked about. So you get to do different things every single day in the week, and I don't get bored, and I look forward to it because every day it's different and I don't do the same thing. I don't get bored, and I can continue doing this for, you know, I think for the rest of my life. And lastly, you get to be part of the community. So this was a photo on Christmas Day last year where I was in Tasmania. I don't work there all the time, but I just went back there because it's like my second home. When you go there, you just have fun. Everyone remembers you, and you just have fun even on Christmas Day. And just being part of the community is just great, which you don't really get that in a city because you're just one out of, you know, 10,000, 20,000 people, whereas in a little country town, people remember you and your patients do as well. So you might wonder, how did I get to where I am, you know, at such a young age? When I was an intern, I did that in Shepparton or Goulburn Valley Health. Then I did my HMO year in Bendigo, where I did a pediatric term. As you might be aware that if you want to do GP training, pediatrics is one of the compulsory rotation. And then in 2019, I did my advanced skills in emergency medicine, and that's in Bendigo Health as well. And I highly recommend doing ED there. It's a great department. In 2020, I did my first year of GP training in Castlemaine. And again, highly recommend that town. It's great. You get to do what a rural generalist would do. So you do clinic work, and at the same time, you'd be on call for the hospital and work in urgent care. In 2021, I did part of my GP training in Bendigo, and part of it, I did my certificate of women's health, where I got to do sexual and reproductive health, antenatal health, and also advocated for LGBTIQ+. In 2022, that's where I got my fellowship and did the travel around Australia. And I decided that I would like to get an extra skill. So last year, I did my advanced skills in anesthetics, and I did that in Adelaide. So just in summary, you can draft or create your training how you want, but the key thing that I've learned is that you can do an extra skill even after you've fellowed. So some people haven't decided what they want to do at the start, and I wouldn't stress about that, because even if you become or just got RACGP, you can always apply to do an advanced skills after fellowship, and you'll be well supported then. And people who only have one advanced skills, you can also do a second one if you want to, you know, a few years down the track. So the beautiful thing about being an RG is that you can wear multiple hats, work at multiple sites, reskill, do more skills, and you just don't get bored. I think that's it from me. This is just a beautiful photo of where I live at the moment in Port Lincoln. This view is just right outside my house when I step out of the door, and I come home to this view as well. So it's beautiful. Not just the view is beautiful, but, you know, the people that you live with and work with are amazing as well. I think I'll leave questions to the end, but I'll pass it on or back to Karen.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. You really exemplify the the jack of all trades. And that's what
Thank
rural
you.
GPs and rural generalists are. You do a bit of everything. I don't have control of the slides. I'm going to, move on to our last panelist, Dr. Monique Hayes, who's a rural generalist registrar situated in Queanbeyan, doing her, finishing up her training, but doing obstetrics and gynecology as well. Monique, are you there?
Yes, I am. My camera is just not on. The host has stopped it. If I could get that turned on. Okay. Cool. Thank you. Can people hear me all right? I will assume so. Just yell out if you can.
Yes, we can, loud and clear.
Thank you. Sorry, I've just changed internet plans as well. Reception's not always so good here. So thanks for coming, everyone. It's very exciting to see what looks like over 80 people here today interested in RG, which is very exciting. My name is Monique. I'm PGY 7 currently, so I'm 7 years post finishing medical school. Finished at University of Sydney Medicine in 2017. In that time, I was a MRBS recipient, so medical rural bonded scholarship position, sort of like a bonded medical program recipient, BMP. And I'm from a country town myself, which is, I think, probably the main thing which pulled me towards the Rural Generalist program. After finishing internship PGY1, I went into the second year of residency, and I think from there it was certain I wanted to be a GP. Now, since then, I've been doing sort of obstetrics wherever possible. When I was a resident, when I was PGY3, or sorry, I know people might not always have those terms around the country, but basically I assisted in C-sections wherever I could. And so I think from then I was very interested in anything obstetrics I could get my hands into. Now I started my obstetrics diplomas because to be an ONG fellow, or not fellow, but a GP obstetrics fellow, you need to do 2 diplomas. The first one is the basic, or the certificate in women's health component, and the second component of the 2 components is the advanced diploma. So as Dr. Sarah mentioned before, the first one gives you general antenatal care, skills in Implanon, Marina, sort of pregnancy counseling, things like that. Whereas the second component of the DRANSCOG Advanced, the diploma of the Royal Australian New Zealand College of Obstetrics and Gynecology, allows you to manage antenatal complications, manage labor, do instrumental deliveries, do elective and emergency C-sections, basically. So if I could just get, was it Laura to put us onto the second slide? So regarding my choice, I always knew I wanted to do GP, but I guess it was, I think I also liked the sub sort of fields in GP. So GP was interesting. I liked the fact that it covers large breadth of topics, but also I really liked mental health as well, but I also wanted to get very hands-on. And again, since I just liked assisting in cesarean sections just because it was fun, I considered ONG itself, but then during residency, I thought that obstetrics itself as a fellow was quite intense, and perhaps needlessly intense for someone who just wants to work and serve a community where there is already not enough midwives, not enough doctors, not enough sort of birth centers. And so I thought, why should I have to publish research? Why should I have to do 10 years of obstetrics training when I could kind of just start doing the job sooner, basically? So let's see. Community feel, my own background. So coming from the country myself, I guess the country demographic is quite different to the metropolitan demographic. And I think I just wanted to be able to serve people like from my community. As Dr. Inna mentioned, I think there's a lot of patient-doctor continuity. So I guess in my line of work as a registrar, currently I'm juggling GP training part-time with obstetrics part-time. You might see someone in GP who is your antenatal patient. She might be trying to fall pregnant. You give her pre-pregnancy sort of advice. You see her during pregnancy, you say, congratulations, you're pregnant. You then see her at the hospital for any complications she has. You see her during the labor itself, if you're kind of lucky, depending on if you're the doctor rostered. You see her for the time potentially recovering from her birth or after C-section. Then, again, being PTY 7 at this point in your life, you will see the baby's child, the woman's child. You'll see the child grow up. And at that point, you might have the woman say, hey, I've recommended friends to you for Marina. I've recommended my mother come see you for menopause care. I've recommended you to my friends because they want to fall pregnant and I want you to be there, sort of GP obs. So it's just quite lovely to have this appreciation from the community. You definitely feel it. I think when I was doing my training in metropolitan hospitals, it was always quite a fast pace. I felt quite anonymous, and I guess that's just how it is because they have so many numbers of registrars and residents. But I think you feel quite acknowledged and quite seen in the hard work that you do, because being a registrar is hard work, and I think we deserve to feel fulfilled. The pictures that are here are this was a whole table of goodbye snacks for me that was put on by the Blue Mountains Hospital after a placement there. That was one of my first patients who I think I followed through from pre-pregnancy, during pregnancy, and with her baby Charlotte. And the little coffee there was just a thank you from another hospital, I think in Windsor in New South Wales, after I just felt very appreciated doing my work in the hospital. And if you just flick to the next slide, Laura, or whoever. Yes. This is just kind of the fun things I would get up to. So I'm a big fan of rodeos. I think I've been to one in every town that I visited. My recent one is probably Queanbeyan, where I'm doing my work at the moment. Bushwalking is a pastime. I have a Jeep, which I've taken four-wheel driving, which is pretty fun. And, you know, in rural or regional areas, there's always a place to do that. Rock climbing was always fun to do in the Blue Mountains. That was Wentworth Falls in the on a walk during one of my hikes there. So I think in the country, there's always something fun to do. I think when it comes to choosing a location specifically, you want to choose somewhere where you know there is stuff you like doing. If you like four-wheel driving, if you like cycling, if you like yoga, if you like karate, that's kind of all my things. You want a church you can settle into, that's me. Many of the country towns I've visited can actually tick these boxes, and especially me having settled in Queanbeyan, which is southeastern New South Wales, I've really found my feet. I purchased a unit which is a 10-minute drive from the hospital, so when I'm on call, you know, I can zoom in at 3 a.m. My pleasure to go catch a baby. Now let's see what's on that next slide. My reason for choosing Murrumbidgee ACT, which is where I am, southeastern New South Wales. So when it came to me, I don't know if it exists now, but I got my rural generalist position with the assistance of Hetty. And for my first year, they gave me a choice of a big number of hospitals: Tamworth, Bathurst, Orange, Queanbeyan was one of them, Tamworth. I ended up choosing Queanbeyan. Basically, I called them up, vibed with the nurses and the midwives and the doctors, as the kids say. I drove there, and after my first meeting with just the staff on the ward, I made my decision. It was a bit YOLO, it was a bit spontaneous, but it turned out to be the best decision ever. Specifically this location, Queanbeyan or Murrumbidgee ACT, it's really close to Victoria, and that's where sort of my family, my brother's family are basically, so I like to be near them. Specifically near Queanbeyan, there's an airport nearby, there's the beloved Murray's bus, which can get me around if I don't feel like driving. And the other benefit of me being specifically at Queanbeyan Hospital is that maybe half an hour away, I've got Canberra Hospital, and I was able to do some upskilling at Canberra Hospital for C-sections, for D&Cs, dilatation and curatages, and that really helped me chunk up my logbook, which is a component of Transcog Advanced. Sorry, please someone tell me if I'm going on too long. Now, the reason I chose obstetrics, actually, could I just get the next slide? Yes. So this is basically a map. If you study it very closely, you'll see all the locations specifically where you can practice obstetrics, where you can practice anesthetics, etc. And somehow, I think if you go onto that actual website, you can see, is the location just training? Is it just a place to work? Or if you're lucky, like Queanbeyan, is it a place where you can both train and work? So I think that was one other way I made the decision to come to this specific place of Queanbeyan. And that is just my cat in the bottom right. I picked her up from the RSPCA doing one of my rural rotations, and she's very portable, as you can see, very well behaved. And now what was on the next slide? Obstetrics. So the reason I chose obstetrics was because I did a placement in Orange Country, New South Wales during medical school. I did a placement in ONG and GP. I found I really enjoyed both. And then throughout medical school and I guess going into internship and residency, I find it very holistic, a very cliche word, but truly it is. Sort of academically, it talks about physiology, anatomy, endocrinology, neonatology, mental health, which is also a passion. You'll learn so much about ultrasound and being able to use the ultrasound on your patients. And it's very satisfying academically, even though I didn't think of myself as very smart. It grows on you. It becomes very enjoyable. Now, I think the other thing about obstetrics is that, I mean, it's the same with any field, but I find it does require a fair bit of compassion, especially rurally. The populations you'll be dealing with might be young mothers, new mothers, following through with pregnancies which are unintended, and maybe at the start they weren't so sure they wanted to proceed. But it does take, I guess, a good GP/obstetrician/GP obstetrician to get to know that woman throughout her trimesters. If she's sort of having difficult social circumstances with an unsupportive family, or again, she's single, let's say her health literacy isn't so good, I think as a GP obstetrician, you have the time to talk with her on sort of human, down-to-earth terms, and improve her health literacy, basically, while you're at it. And that comes up time and time again, sort of in the smaller countries, I think. I guess my pictures there just represent, you know, what you'll be talking about. NIPT, genetic carrier screening, that's all the craze right now, which is fantastic. And yeah, you'll find yourself talking with your patients before, during, and after pregnancy, sort of tests and investigations. Now, what I like most about, I think, my training is my location specifically. At Queanbeyan, and again, I find with many rural hospitals, the workplace culture is very different. You will know the nurses, the midwives, your colleagues very well. You'll know the cleaners, you'll know the medical students, you will know the nurse unit manager of the whole ward. And you basically get to know each other on a name-to-name basis. You'll probably get each other's mobile phones. Pagers in my hospital don't particularly exist. Why? Because you can call them and ask for advice or ask for some help at any time, basically. They're very, very big on teaching, I find, in rural hospitals, and it's a very hands-on kind of teaching. It's not didactic. It's not, oh, here's a textbook, read it. And what was the other thing? I think in obstetrics specifically, when cow dung hits the fan, you want there to be good leadership. You want there to be good support networks. If something wrong happens, you want there to be good debriefing for the ward to run smoothly and for sort of everyone to get along and to feel happy at work. So I find in country hospitals, they've often got that.
That's a great point, Monique, actually, because it's all about leadership, isn't it? Part of the training of becoming a rural generalist is to be that leader in the rural team and rural culture. So on that note, we're going to open up to questions. So keep your cameras on and our panelists can come back on. So if you've got specific questions for our panelists, please type it in. If we don't get to your questions, we will send out information and links to you afterwards. And if you have anything specific to your situation, we encourage you to contact the team. Like Joe said, talk to us, contact us via the email that you saw before, and talk to someone. So Laura, are you going to run us through the questions, or do I just pick?
No, I can run us through the questions. So adding on to what Karen said, just make sure you're up for any questions. We won't be able to answer them all tonight. So if they have up for it, we'll try and get to them. So the first one is talking about where they can find more information about what it's like to live and work in each rural region and sub-region. It's a great lead into our next webinar, which is next week on the 20th. And in that webinar, there will be breakout rooms for every region, and you get to meet regional teams, hear regional stories. So I do encourage you to come along if you want to know more about the different regions and what they have to offer. I put a link in the chat before about where you can register for that webinar, but I can put it in later on as well for anyone looking for that. Okay. Now the first question for the panel, and maybe Karen can answer, is how does the RACGP RG program differ from that of?
From ACRM, did you say?
Mhm.
Yeah, so I might jump in there first with that. So our training, the end point is that we're both recognized as specialist general practitioners. That's the end point. At the moment, there's no specialist or subspecialty recognition for RG yet, and we're applying to the AMC for that recognition as a subspecialty in general practice. So the end point's the same, but our program focus on the broader scope of rural general practice. So our trainees spend at least 18 months working in general practice, as well as, you know, with the emergency and the hospital rotations and the additional rural skills, whereas with ACRM, their program can spend a lot less time in general practice. That's the main point of difference.
Thanks, Karen. Next question, is there assistance with finding accommodation when going rural or remote? Joe, do you want to speak to this one, or even our RG panel?
Yeah, I can sort of offer some suggestions around it. Definitely you've got your flexible funding available there to support you. But if you're also looking for some connections, the best point will be your local teams as well. So once you've applied and you're accepted to the program, you'll be meeting those local team members to support you. So yeah, your training coordinators, your medical educators, heads of training, they all have a personal connection rurally in communities and be able to offer assistance or put you in connection. And I think that's a real big thing there, is putting people in connection with the right people.
Yeah, that's great. Sarah or Monique or Inna, did you want to speak to any of your experiences going rural and finding accommodation tricky?
Hello?
I can chip in. So I think it's definitely a bit challenging finding accommodation in rural area, and knowing who's around or knowing who to speak to is important, like what Joe said. So speaking to your medical educator, speaking to who's in the region, that's quite helpful. But I think with the new, or in the last few years, the flexible fund has been really helpful for registrars, because trainees actually get a decent amount of grants towards their rental. So definitely apply for that. That's definitely something that's quite new and helpful for trainees going to the country.
Great, thank you.
I would like to add as well, if it's possible.
Sure.
What I can say from my experience, we actually have no problem with accommodation in Mora. So you guys very welcome who would like to come. Our Shire of Mora given housing to newcomers. So my house where I stay now, it's pretty much belong to surgery. I came pretty much, I got keys in the first day, came in the house, there is everything you need. There's kettle, there's microwave, there's washing machine, fridge, everything you need. No payment required for the water, but you are responsible for your electricity bill, and it's very small fee for rental fee for the accommodation. So like I said, for doctors in Mora, we have absolutely no worry about payments.
Great, thanks so much, Inna.
Thanks.
Okay, next question. How much control do you have in picking an actual clinic or town inside a rural region / sub-region? And how often do you rotate between each town / clinic? Karen or Joe, do you want to speak to this one?
I think you can, if you're in a rural location, we would be quite supportive of those who want to stay there longer than 6 months. So our general practice training time spans across 18 months. You can choose to stay there for 6 months, 12 months, which is what we encourage. 12 months, like a cycle of care for patients, and it's a good time to stay at least. But if you want to stay longer, you certainly can apply for that.
Great, yeah. Okay, there's a question in here for Sarah, if you want to answer that one. So how do you find balancing both anaesthetics and ED advanced skills, and what are the requirements to maintain the ability to practice in these specialty areas?
That's a great question. So I actually found that emergency and anaesthetics complement each other very well. So currently working in Port Lincoln, I get to work in emergency, and if there's anything that requires procedure sedation, I get to do the anaesthetic side of things, and I get the other doctor to do the procedure side of things. How do you maintain your skills? I think it's important to be aware, I think, as a doctor, that we need to maintain our skills, and going back to where you train to upskill once or twice a year is important. So RACGP or ACRM, or just in general, we've got there's funding for emergency and anaesthetics to upskill, and it's $2,000 per day when you go and upskill. So I highly recommend looking into that if you're thinking of upskilling. But I think it's important when you choose a town to work to make sure that that town actually allows you to continue doing both anesthetics and emergency. And that's why I chose Port Lincoln. And I highly recommend people going to Port Lincoln, because I get to do 2 days of anesthetics a week, and I get to do at least 2 days of emergency medicine a week. So I definitely can maintain my skills. Yeah, and they have 400 births a year. So my last week on call, I did 4 epidurals, and I was up catching babies, 4 times that week. So I don't think I would de-skill staying there. I hope that answers your question.
I think it definitely does. You've done a great overview of what it's like really on the ground. There was a question in here since disappeared, but maybe Karen, we could go over again the difference between the rural pathway and rural generalist. There's a bit of confusion about whether the rural pathway is just for rural generalists or whether the general pathway isn't about rural generalists. Maybe we can just go over that topic.
Yeah, so
yeah.
On either pathway, rural or general pathway, you can work in rural. The only difference is general pathway can work in MMM1 locations. So even if you're on general pathway, you may choose to never work in an MMM1 location, do all your training in a rural location. And either pathways, you can do rural generalist training. So someone asked a question earlier, can you do your RACGP and then later on fellow, and then do emergency training, and then do some additional skills? You certainly can do it that way, provided you have worked at least 12 months in a rural general practice.
Great, thank you. Now I know we're going a little bit over time, but maybe one more question to finish us off. This person's asking about if they've done rotations before they applied, can they have that, before they've got general registration, do they need to do them again after general registration? So can they have their core rotations classified as recognition of prior learning and experience as part of their AST training?
I'm happy to jump in there. I think everyone brings their own experience once they've applied. So it's really important to talk to us, is to use that Become a GP to see how that experience you have done actually meets the eligibility requirements for general practice placements. And also then once you've accepted your placement on the AGPT program, is you're going to go through an induction stage where you'll be talking to your medical educator or a medical educator one-on-one and mapping out, like the rural programs team like myself, mapping out your training and actually looking at those requirements and making sure you've met them. So everyone's circumstance is different. So I think it's important for that person to come and talk to us, just so we're giving you the right advice.
Great, thanks, Jo. Now we
Can
might
I just quickly add, oh, sorry.
No, you go, Sarah.
I was just going to quickly add that the reason why recognition of prior learning is good, but it's also important for RACGP if they want you to do, say, additional time in ED and ED, general surgery or general medicine. There is a reason to that. It's just because if you haven't done, say, these core rotations in the last 3 to 5 years, you would forget about it. And as a GP, it's just important to know those skills. And just speaking as out as a rural generalist, it's just great to know those little things, because you would know what to do. Whereas if you haven't done emergency for 10 years and you want to do GP training, it'll be a struggle when you become a rural generalist. So there is a reason why they want to look at when you did it, when did you last do it, where did you do it? That's important as well. But like what Jo said, just email Becoming a GP email and someone will guide you through that.
Perfect, thank you. I'll put that email again in the chat for anyone who is wanting it. But other than that, I think we will wrap up there and don't take up too much more of your time tonight. I want to thank all of our presenters, our panelists, also thank the Rural Doctors Association of Australia for sponsoring this evening. And just remind anyone that if you're ready to apply for the AGPT program, applications are now open and do close on the 15th of April. There will be a survey that pops up after we've ended the webinar tonight, where you can provide any feedback and information about what you thought the webinar was like tonight. Karen, did you want to have any final remarks for the group?
Only that we would welcome you all to consider becoming a rural GP or rural generalist, and please contact us, because I know there's a lot of questions there we haven't not answered. So contact our team. We'll get back to you one-on-one.
Perfect. Thank you so much. All right, I'll close the evening out. Thank you, everyone. Bye.